you. Just so you know, we are going to record this session, and it has already been started of the recording, and it's great. Want to introduce ourselves to you. My name is Mark Prahalad, and I have the wonderful Sarah Romero with us. We also have Thomas with us, Henke, one of our newest training consultants, but he is amazing. Today our topic will be manual testing. We'll be creating manual test cases, converting manual test cases to automated test cases, as well as using the manual recorder. This is like absolutely amazing, and can't wait to hear what Sarah is going to bring to the table about it. The next thing we should talk about is the MOOC etiquette. We have started on time, and you may notice that your computers are all already in listen-only mode. It's not that we don't want to hear from you, but we would rather hear from you in the question bank so that we can then answer your questions properly and you can still take in everything that Sarah wants to say to you. Also, we'll be doing a question and answer period at the very end. Please try to keep your questions on topic, and you can send your questions in at any time, and we can then answer as many of them at the end as possible. To say it again, this is being recorded, and it will be available on our website within this week. Thank you all, and I will pass this on to Sarah.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Happy to be here. So today I'm going to be talking about, as Mark mentioned, manual testing in Tricentis Tosca. We're going to cover three main topics, as Mark mentioned. I'm going to show you how to create manual test cases, so that can be done by scratch. It can also be done using test case design, so I'm going to walk you through that. I'll also show you how to convert your manual test cases into automated test cases, and I will show you how to use the manual recorder, okay, and all of the options that you have within the manual recorder. So with that, I'm going to just go ahead and jump directly into Tosca. Okay, so hopefully all of you now can see Tosca open on my screen. And I have it open now to the test case section where I already have a manual test cases folder. And in this folder, I'm going to create a manual test case. So just like you would with a regular or an automated test case, as I'm sure many of you are familiar with, I can go ahead and just create a test case. I can also use the Create Object button in the ribbon at the top. Okay, so it's a normal test case. Adding the test case, it doesn't distinguish between manual or automated. And I can go ahead and name this test case. For example, I'll call this one Auto Insurance Austria. Okay. So if any of you watched one of the MOOCs that I did a month or so ago about the vehicle insurance in our sample application, I'm going to be using the same test case principles. So if you look here, this is the application that I'm going to be creating a manual test case for. So you see I open the URL sampleapp.tricentis.com. I will click on automobile, and then I'll be able to proceed and fill in information here, okay? So that's what I want to create the manual test case for. So I now have a test case. I'll go ahead and set it to in work. And now with automated test cases, you know that to add test steps, you need a module. With a manual test case, you can actually just add a manual test step. Okay, so to do that, you see I have the icon to create a manual test step when I right-click on the test case. So it looks just like a normal test step icon, except it has a little hand on it. And that's it. And now, just as you would imagine, you would want a manual tester to read this test step and know what values are contained in the test step so that it knows maybe what we're supposed to be, what page we're supposed to be working on. And then under this, we'll add the test step values, the manual test step values, which will contain the instructions for the manual tester to actually follow. Okay. So for example, we can call this one go to automobile insurance page. Okay. And or let's say navigate. Okay. So this step should contain all of the instructions for the manual tester for how to navigate to the automobile insurance page. Obviously, we will then need to add a manual test step value. And this manual test step value should tell the manual tester actually what to do. So for example, click on automobile tab. And the value here, so the actual value that the manual tester should enter would be, for example, click. Now, keep in mind that because we're anticipating that eventually we would want to convert this manual test case to an automated test case, we could use here actually the same syntax that we would use in an automated test case, and it will make for a faster transition to an automated test case. So click here would be sufficient for a manual tester. They would know that to click on the automobile tab, I have to click. But I can also use the actual, oops, sorry. Just one second. The syntax that you would be familiar with from automated test cases, for example, click with curly brackets around it, and this will then be easily transferable to an automated test case. So as you would design a manual test case, and I saw that someone asked why would I use a manual test case, perhaps some of the controls that you want to steer are not yet scannable. So maybe not every object in the application is ready to be scanned, but we already have the process and the workflow ready. You can create manual test steps in anticipation of later automation, and then when the modules are created, you would be able to link these manual steps to the module when they're available, and assume that now they're not, but I still want to be able to create the workflow in a test case. Okay? And so that's it. So now I would just continue to add test steps just as I would with an automated test case. So the next step is once they're on the automobile tab, so click on the automobile tab, now they would fill in the information on this page. Okay, so for example, I would use the same sort of, for best practices, the same kind of rule of thumb that one test step should be one page, keeping in line with the rule that you have one module for one page. And again, that will help with an easier transition to automation. So this whole page, we'll call it the Enter Vehicle Data page. And within this step, we'll have all of the instructions for the manual tester for what he should enter on this vehicle data page. For example, enter the make, and then we tell him which actual value to enter. For example, Ford. And enter the engine performance, and we would tell the tester to enter the value 90. Okay? And you can see here as well that I have action modes. So this could tell that, I mean, of course, the name can indicate to the tester what they should do with it. You could also, for example, use verify so that the manual tester would see that they're supposed to be verifying that value rather than entering it, and so on. Okay? So this would now be the creating a manual test case from scratch. I can run the manual test case in the Scratchbook, but I can run it in the Scratchbook just to see what, to show you what that would look like. So we'll go back to the main page. It's taking just a minute. Here we go. Okay, so this is now what it will look like. So in the scratchbook, it's showing me one step at a time. And this is how the manual tester would be able to see it. During execution, it will look a little bit different because you can see the entire test case. Here it's showing me just step by step because it's the scratchbook. And you can see that I have this larger view. I can also minimize it if I want to get it out of the way so that I can see more of the page. And I can also select this icon here, which reduces it to just the one step so that it takes up a little bit less space and it's easier to kind of focus on the step. So for example, here the manual tester receives the information, click on the automobile tab, okay, and then they can either select passed or failed and then move on to the next step. Okay, so let's see. They should then enter the make. That worked. And then you also have the option here. So for example, I have a text box. I can use the inject data value option so that the value here, let's say it's a long syntax, some long set of characters, rather than having to type it or copy and paste, the manual tester can use inject data value and it will input this value into the text box or whatever control you have there. Okay, and then I'm done. I received this little results window showing me that execution was completed, and then I'll also receive the scratchbook window with obviously a little bit less detailed information than an automated test case because it doesn't know whether if something passed or failed exactly what the manual tester was doing at the time. But I'll show you during execution how you can add more details to the results in the execution. Okay, so that's creating a manual test case from scratch. We also have the option to create manual test cases from a test sheet from test case design. Okay, so let me add another folder here inside of this folder, and I'll call it test cases from test case design. And as I mentioned, if you saw my MOOC for using Microsoft Office as a data source, then you're familiar with this test sheet. So basically, it just is a set of different instances or test cases that would navigate through. So it includes all the data for 6 different test cases for this insurance application. Okay? So you can see here, I've got 6 instances on this test sheet. And here you have the names of them. Okay, so it's automobile insurance for Austria 1 through 6. And I can actually drag the test sheet directly into my folder here. And of course, because there's no module information, there's nothing linked to it to make them automated, by default, it will create actually manual test cases. And the manual test cases, focus over here, the manual test cases will include test steps, which are derived from the attributes in the test sheet, and then test step values, which are derived from the lowest level of attributes in the test sheet. And you can see they adopt the values, and the values relate to the specific, so whichever test case I'm looking at, the relevant values were taken. So you can see test case 2 is for BMW. Those are the values from this column in the test sheet. Okay, so I already now have some manual test cases created, and they're theoretically ready to run because they've already got the values in there. I would just maybe need to make some small modifications to make sure that the flow of the manual test case actually matches the flow of the application. Because of course, as you know, when you're creating the test case design, it's possible that you have all the values there, but they may not be in the right order. So for the manual tester, you would want to double check that they match with the requirements of the application. Okay, so you can see here this test step. So vehicle data, entering the vehicle data. Again, like I said, you could modify it so that it matches the application. So this is the vehicle data page, and then you could tell them enter vehicle make, enter engine performance, and so on. Okay, and it will run just like I showed you before. Yeah, and then basically, once you have the test case ready, you can simply, we'll just use this first one, we'll move just the first one over there. I can create an execution entry, or an execution list. So these will be my manual test cases. And here I have an execution entry, and now I could run that test case in my execution list. So it's already ready to go. To run, so if you've been using automated test cases or execution lists, then you know that typically you would press run here. But you might have seen this option before, run as manual test case. This is the option that you want to select if you want to run this execution entry as a manual test case. Okay, so I can go ahead and run this, and I'll quickly just show you the difference then between the scratchbook and the execution list. So first of all, it was a little bit quicker to appear. Okay. Also, as I said now, you see that where in the scratchbook I could only see one step at a time, in the execution list I can actually see the entire test case at once. It shows me on the test step level how many values are meant to be steered in each test step. And let's say, okay, so for this test case, I'm meant to enter the vehicle make, which is Audi. Okay, and I would set that to passed. But let's say when I go to enter engine performance, let's say for whatever reason it doesn't work. Then as the tester, I have the option, so maybe I want to reduce the size to make it easier to work with. Where'd it go? Okay, just a second. The window kind of minimized out of view. I can't click on it. Okay, let me just 1 second here. Okay, so I guess the way I had minimized it, it kind of minimized out of view, so I'll start again. There we go, that's how it was supposed to appear. So sometimes my computer has issues when I'm running the GoToWebinar recording interface, as well as Tosca, as well as HTML application. So sorry about that, that's pretty much just my computer's problem. Anyway, so here now I have the minimized steps. So for example, as I said, the Audi step passed, but let's say for whatever reason the engine performance text box is not working or it's not available. Then as the tester, I can add a comment, so I can say an error message incorrectly appeared, or whatever, or text box not available. Okay, so there I have a little message. I can add an attachment, so if during this step I receive some sort of output from the system, I could add that as an attachment to this step. I can also take a screenshot. So let's say here I want to take a screenshot of what appeared at the time. And then I can also annotate the screenshot, so I could say, I don't know. Unexpected, I don't know, anything. So I could annotate this here. I can also blur out certain information. So if this would be shared, I can blur some pieces of information here. And yeah, so basically you can do a lot here as the tester, and I can save it, and that screenshot will be added with the step. And then of course I would set it to failed. And at that point, it would probably make sense to finish the test execution. And you can see that now it appears in a similar fashion to how it would appear with an automated test case, that I have the execution entry becomes red, and I have my log info, and it shows me that the most recent run failed, and I can see which step failed, and I can see as the log info, I can see the message that the tester entered. I can also see in the detail column the screenshot. So if I do show detail viewer, I should be able to see the screenshot in detail from the tester. Okay, I guess my computer, again, is just going a little bit slow opening everything up, but the screenshot should open up and appear here. And yeah, so, and you can see also the value used in the action mode and everything. Okay, so regular execution entry. So let's say that I now have the application ready and the modules have been scanned, so the controls are ready for automation, and I had been previously running these manual test cases because the application wasn't ready, or I had created the manual test cases up front because I had created the test case design or whatever. So now, let's say I'll open my modules section because I have the modules created. And you can see now that I have scanned this page, so the vehicle data automobile page has been scanned, and it has all of the controls that you've seen on the page, so the make, the engine performance, the date, and so on. So actually automating manual test cases in Tosca is really simple. All I have to do is drag and drop the module, the module that I created when I scanned, and drop it onto the manual test step. Okay? And I get this assign module attributes window. And the reason that the module attributes window appears is so that I can make sure that the appropriate manual test step values are mapped with the right module attributes. Okay? So for example, you can see on the left-hand side here that some of the controls have a small link icon next to them. This link icon indicates that they've automatically, because of the name, been linked to a module attribute. And when I click on it, I can see which module attribute. And you can see that the icon here, the broken link or non-existent link icon, doesn't highlight anything on the right side, because it means that because of the name difference, it wasn't sure exactly which attribute to assign that test step value to. So I can simply, if I know that this test step value actually should be linked to a module attribute, then I can simply drag and drop it onto the module attribute, and now they're linked. And again, this is why it's important to make sure that you have designed your manual test cases to reflect how an automated test case would look, because you will want to have, for example, all of what would eventually be all of the module attributes on one page in one test step. Okay. Also, you can see here make should be matched to make, and I press OK because everything else is linked, except you can see that I have a module attribute here that's not linked to a manual test step value, so I would have to then modify this when I save it. otherwise. You can see immediately that the test step, the little hand disappeared, so now it's an automated test step, and it has adopted all of the values and action modes from the manual test case, and now it's a fully functioning, ready to go automated test step. And as I mentioned, the only thing is that I have to notice that I might have a module attribute that's not been filled in because it didn't exist in the manual test case or test steps. So I can then select, for example, click here as an action, and now this whole test step is ready to run. So let me make sure I have the page open here, and I'll run just this one test step in the Scratchbook to show you that now it's a functioning automated test step. Okay. So there we go. So what was originally, and you saw me execute it, a completely manual test step, all I had to do was drag and drop the module onto the manual test step, and it becomes a automated test step. And I can then simply automate the entire test case. Of course, to automate it the most efficiently, it makes sense to modify the manual test case before converting it to an automated test case. And the reason for that is, let's say you can see in my personal data and address data test steps that I have a lot of redundancy. So I have first name, a first name page or test step with the first name value, a last name test step with the last name value. And if you look in the application, these are actually all individual values, but on the same tab, the Enter Insurance Data tab. In order to link, so this is a module that I have scanned here, and it has all of the attributes in it. In the way that it currently exists, I would have to link this module to each test step. So you see now I have only first name used here, and I'll have to link it every time to every test step in order to have all these values used. What I could do before automating the steps is just kind of merge all of these values into one step. So, okay, I won't do all of them, but you can see it would be all of these down here. And then I could simply delete the empty steps and rename this one, for example, enter, oops. So just as an example here. And then you can see that it now adopts the values that were there, and it populates the one test step rather than having to do multiple test steps all on the same page. So this just goes along with the best practices for a regular automated test case. Okay. So the last topic that I wanted to cover is the manual recorder. So the manual recorder can be used to create manual test cases. So the recorder options for exploratory scenarios, manual test cases, and automated test cases are all always on the Home tab in Tosca. So if I go to the Home tab, I'll see these 3 different recorders. And I'll be using the manual test case recorder. If you want to see the exploratory scenario recorder, we do have an exploratory testing MOOC that you can check out on the website. Okay, so the manual test case recorder can actually be launched from any of the sections, so it can be launched from the test case section, from the manual module section. As long as you have the Home tab open, you can create a manual test case. And what it will record, for example, if I'm in the test case section, it will record my interactions with the desktop, and then it will save a test case with all of those manual steps and the values. One cool feature that I can use is that I can launch it in the requirement section with the relevant requirement selected, and not only will it create a test case, but it will also create a link from that test case to the requirement and an execution entry that's linked to that requirement. Okay? So you can see I have this requirement set for the insurance calculator, and I've been working so far on test cases for creating automobile insurance in Austria, because you can see that according to the weight, this is the most important requirement, so that's where I want to start my testing. So with this requirement selected, I can click on the manual test case recorder. And let me pull this, it went to my secondary screen, so, okay. On the left-hand side of the screen, I receive a little tool, the recorder tool, which shows me that at the moment the recorder is working and that it's recording my interactions. I have a pause button, so I can pause the recorder, and I have the stop button, which completes the recording. Okay, and now I can actually start interacting with my desktop. So clicking the automobile tab, selecting Audi, entering engine performance, entering some date. So I'll just select a few of these really quickly. Okay, so that was the first tab there, and as I said, I clicked, I entered values, and Tosca recorded them. So now I will go ahead and push stop, which will end the recording. And now I have a manual test case manager page which appears. So I'll expand that so you can see it a little bit easier. Okay. And the manual test case manager now allows me, I have a manual test case. I can rename it, so I can say my automobile insurance test case, whatever. Okay, so this is the new manual test case, and all of the steps. The way that Tosca creates this test case with the recorder is that every interaction has a step, and then the actual value and the action are the test step value. So here you can see that on the enter insurance data page, so this is the title of the page, the caption of the page, I performed an action, and the action was that I clicked on the Tricentis logo. Then on the front page, I clicked on automobile, then I clicked on make, entered make, and so on. So every interaction is here. It even includes the date that I entered, and so on. I have the options, so I can I can decide to keep the screenshot. So for every interaction, a screenshot was created. The easiest way, so right now this looks very slim, kind of. If I go to this is the results tab, and it shows me just the results of the manual test case, so basically how it would look if it were being run. If I click on the design tab, I get a bit of a cooler view where I can go to each step, and as I scroll down, I can see the screenshot that was taken and at each interaction, and you can see it adds the information for the interaction, so it can show at each step exactly what I clicked on, or exactly the value that I entered and where I entered it. So you can see it recognized that this, it's still, even though it's a manual test case, Tosca still recognizes, for example, that this was a box here, and in that box I entered a value. So it highlights that. I can also move it so I can change the, I could change the text here if I wanted to. So I can modify this. I can move around the arrow. I can add other annotations just like I did before, and so on. Another cool thing that I can do is, because, as I said, you might know, look, all of these steps were all on the same page. Before bringing it into the test case section, I can actually merge these test step values all together. And then I end up getting one step with all of the test step values underneath it. And you can see all of the steps I performed. This might not be the best example because the drop-down box is here, but you can see it shows all of the clicks and all of the actions that I performed. And then I can go ahead and select, for example, keep all, so to keep all of the screenshots. And I can go back to the results tab. So the interactions were recorded when I clicked on the recorder. I also have the option to, and you can see here, all of the screenshots have been selected to keep, so that means to bring them into Tosca, into the Commander when I save my test case. I can also add steps, so let's say something was missing here, I can create a step or a value, or if there was an unnecessary step or redundant step, I can delete that value right here. And I can also add a video interaction. So I'm not going to open it right now, and the only reason is because I think it will cause problems with the GoToWebinar recorder as well, so to have the 2 layers of video recording. But here you can see I can choose which area of my screen I want to capture. So I can select just a part of the window, the secondary screen, primary screen, whatever. And it will just record a video of my interactions. And once I get the video, I can add any annotations like I would on screenshots. And when the video is played, it will actually pause everywhere where I've added information or annotations, and it will pause for a couple seconds so that the person viewing the video can see what I was pointing at or what I was indicating there. And I can trim the video and so on. Okay. Then I, of course, can save it, but just before I do that, I have the option to export the test case. I'll show you now what the export function does. So export actually allows me to save the manual test case and all of the information that I captured when I created the test case. So I can decide which level I want to save, so just the steps or also the values, any additional columns, so if I want to see the action modes or the values that were used. I can also decide whether I want to export the media associated with the test case, so all screenshots, any videos, any attachments that were created. And what it's going to do is it's going to create a PDF file for me that's basically a step-by-step kind of manual through my test case. Okay, and of course I can decide the format. So I say export, I'll just save it quickly to my desktop. So you can see it's 20 pages long. That's because I included every single screenshot in there. I'll just make this a bit smaller. And you can see it created a test case documentation PDF. And here you can see that it's the documentation. It tells me the name of my test case, information about who created it, when, how many steps and values and screenshots and videos and so on. Here you can see it gives me every step, and if I included values, every value as well. And it includes all the media. So here you can see it has all of the screenshots with all of the actions. So as I mentioned, this is cool because you can kind of, you're exporting basically a step-by-step manual of this test case or this process. And so you see it has all of the steps here, system information, so you know exactly the conditions under which it was recorded, and the application that was used, that was recorded. So this was Internet Explorer. And if I had also saved a video, there would have been a folder created here called Media, and the videos would be in there as well. Okay? So that's it for the manual test case manager. I can go ahead and save this and close it. And here you can see the cool thing since I launched the recorder, so going back like 5 minutes, because I launched the recorder on my particular requirement, it created a test case link. So it shows me that there is a test case that was created for this requirement. I can jump to that test case in the test case section. And here you can see that it imported the test case I created in the recorder. You can see that the difference between using the recorder and, for example, test case design is that the values aren't automatically filled in the value column. So you will have to do that if you would want to, as I said, later automate it. I mean, you could automate it like this anyway, but that means you will still have to, at some point, create these values here. Okay? And so you've got your ready-to-go manual test case. You've got the link to the requirement, and you also have, or it should have created. And you should also have a execution list that was created as a manual test case in the execution list section, or an execution entry that was created in the execution list section. Okay, so yeah, so that's it for the Tosca demonstration today. I'm just going to do a quick recap of what I covered, and then I'll hand it back over to Mark, and we'll take a look at the questions you guys have asked to see if there's anything left unanswered. Okay? So manual test cases, as I said, can be created from scratch, which I showed you, which is just creating a test case and populating it with manual test steps or test values. It can be adapted from test case design. So that meant dragging instances from test case design to the test case section. That automatically creates manual test steps and test step values. You would just have to adapt it to make sure that it reflects the application. And you can also create manual test cases using the manual test case recorder. And remember that to execute manual test cases in the execution section, you should use the Run as Manual Test Case option in the execution section. One thing which I didn't demonstrate, but you can do as well, so I dragged the entire test sheet into the test case section, which created multiple test cases for each instance. But you can use it just like you would automated test cases. So I can convert I could drag one instance, so for example, the smoke test, the straight through, and convert that to a template, and then link the test sheet, and I could then create multiple template instances that are based, so manual test cases that are based on my manual template. And again, that would be great for later automation, because I automate just the template and instantiate, and then I get a bunch of automated test cases or template instances. And the benefit of this, of course, is that depending on how your process how you do your testing. So I had the question before from somebody, what happens if the application's not ready, but we already want to design our test cases, or we want to actually build test cases? In this case, you could create manual test cases with the expected flow of the application and then later automate them when the modules are scanned by simply dragging and dropping. So as I said, you could simply drag and drop the modules onto the test steps, and to ensure efficient and smooth transition from manual to automated test steps, you should use one test step per one module or one page, and then make sure to link the right controls to the right test step values. And finally, for using the recorder, launching from the requirement section creates a test case link, a test case, and an execution entry. And you can export all your recorder results, including screenshots and videos, to create sort of a manual of the test case. Okay, so I'm going to pause the audio for a minute so I can check out what kind of questions you guys have answered. I know Thomas and Mark have been busily typing away, answering your questions along during the session, but I want to find out if there's anything that I can answer or that we can answer out loud that's relevant to the group. So just one moment, please. Okay, I had one question, which was, where can I find the settings for manual test execution? So to find those, you should go to Project, Settings, Commander, and Manual Test Execution. And here I have the settings for my manual test execution. So that was Project, Settings, Commander, Manual Test Execution. Okay. So someone asked, what's the difference between recording and scanning, the scanning option in automated testing? So the main difference between, well, there's a few differences. So first of all, the manual testing recorder only records the interactions on the page. So it says I entered the value 90 or whatever, and it takes a screenshot, but it captures no technical data from those controls on the page, whereas an automated scan actually creates modules which contain the properties and the technical steering information for the controls on the page. So you can see these modules here. For example, make is a combo box, and it contains technical steering information. So it's when Tosca wants to run an automated test step that contains this combo box, it knows how to locate the combo box and how to steer it. With a manual test case, there's no link to any particular object on the page, and when I record an interaction, it simply records the steps. So it says I clicked on, let's see if this, click on the make combo box, but it doesn't record any of the technical information around this combo box. It just takes a screenshot, and that's it. So it wouldn't be able to steer the combo box without creating a scan. And for that reason, we create the modules and link them to the test case section. So I hope that answered the question. Let me check for some more questions, just a moment. Okay, so you guys have some really great questions. It looks like actually most of them have already been answered in the session by Thomas and Mark. I did see that someone asked the question, asked a question about, oh, sorry, there's one more question I saw someone ask before I move over to Mark. How do I link manual test cases to requirements? That's easy. So I link manual test cases to requirements in the same way that you link any other test case. You simply drag and drop it onto the requirement, and that's it. And now it's linked to the requirement. Okay. So someone asked how you can get access to the recordings. So I'm going to go ahead and pass that over to Mark. And thank you guys for listening. So.
Hello, wonderful people. It's great to hear that you guys came. I hope this was very enjoyable and you got lots of good information that you can chew on for the next couple days. Our next webinar will be in 2 weeks, and it will be on robotics. And robotics is the taking mundane manual tasks that you would normally do and automating them and making it easier on your life. So the topics that will be covered is the automation process of doing that, the practical usages for it, for me, ordering something that I'm going to order the same every day. If I work at an office, order the same set of paper whenever paper gets low in my office. And then using it in Tricentis Tosca to automate it in other topics that you have. We are looking completely forward to any feedback you want to give us or any questions that you may have. If you have any really detailed questions, we would like you to contact our support at Tricentis.com. If you have any questions about our trainings, please contact us at academy@tricentis.com. And to see our knowledge base, we have support at Tricentis.com. As well as our knowledge base, we have an online manual in the same place, support.tricentis.com. As you can see the links there. And as we said at the beginning, we have been recording this session, and we have recorded the session. It's still recording the session. And once the session is done, it'll take about 2 or 3 days before it's actually uploaded to our website. And then you can find it there at tricentis.com/MOOCs/academy. Let me get this right. Let me just make sure I get this right. So we have www.tricentis.com/academy/MOOCs. And that should give you complete access there where you can view our MOOCs on our website, check them out on Vimeo, or download them and watch them offline. And we would love to have any feedback you guys may have with that. So that concludes our webinar. But if you have any other questions, please send them to us, either email or here now in these next 3 or 4 minutes that we have left. And we can add them to, and they will be recorded for future reference. Thank you for this webinar, and thank you for coming, and we hope to see you again soon. Blessings.